course, at the same time, if he was actually suicidal, he was not in a normal state of mind. Exactly.
That's very true.
Yeah.
The other thing that is weird about his suicide note is that he makes a very direct reference to God. Kessler was Roman Catholic, but he wasn't really religious. It wasn't a big deal in a lot in his life, and a lot of the people that knew him didn't understand why he would make a reference to God in his suicide note, that God is going to let him in, because for all intents and purposes operated without a care towards that.
What do you know if his family was particularly religious?
It sounds like some of them were and some of them weren't. And
what about his son?
He had drifted, and I don't know about his son, to be honest. His son is one of the hardest ones to find anything on.
Yeah.
I mean, not that I tried to pursue that, but I never really saw a lot about his son.
Yeah. So I think the explanation for the God thing is that obviously if you kill yourself, you're a Catholic and you kill yourself.
You're not getting in.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that might have been his way of saying, hey, family, don't worry about me. I think God's going to let me in.
Yeah, it's going to be okay.
It's going to, yeah. I think that might have been it.
I don't know. It's weird. This is another one of those that I'm just kind of 50-50 on.
I'm not. He killed himself.
Well, I agree with Joe. I sadly think that he killed himself, and for reasons that I don't understand.
Yeah, I guess that's, for me, it's the big question mark that adds that component of when he was murdered, is that, like, I literally cannot find a single thing that makes me think that he was suicidal.
That is the problem. But I mean, there's people that kill themselves all the time. And we had no idea that there was anything wrong.
And I understand your 50% of thinking that he's murdered, because there is always, especially when we're dealing with a conspiracy like this, there's always that thought that they were good enough, that there was a shadow and they brought a ketchup bottle full of matching blood type and sprayed it on the wall.
Let's be fair, it wouldn't have been so hard to get his blood. It was pouring out of him. I mean, we could talk about all of that stuff. There's a lot of ways that it could go, but that is a hell of a reach. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So
it's hard.
It's a lot of work,
I don't know,
especially considering that these guys were not very subtle in their other murders.
Right.
And they were busy, like, running multinational, laundering schemes.
Right. So we're talking only about that suicide, right? We're not talking about if the octopus is real or not.
Well,
the octopus is a different thing.
Okay, I'll be honest with you, and I think Joe is probably going to be on the same page as I am, because I know we've talked about this on this podcast before. I think that an organization of the size and complexity that it is purported to be is impossible.
Well, it's possible you can't keep it secret. It's possible to have it.
Okay, that's a perfect thing to add in, because people are loudmouth idiots, and while they may be able to do something, they would not all of them be able to do it in secret.
That's fair.
So I personally think that, at least at the scale that it's said to be, the octopus isn't real. Maybe it is a very small little group that has a lot of influences, that does small things, but nowhere near the scale.
Interesting.
Yeah, and also the interrelation is all clear to me.
Oh, you mean like Princess Di and all of that?
Yeah, it's not clear now.
I will point the finger right back at Ken Thomas for that.
Yeah,
I really think that he got near the end of his book and said, "Oh crap, I have a word count to meet. Let's pull something else in."
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. You obviously have an opinion on the octopus.
Oh no, I just think.
I'm curious what it is actually at this point.
I just, I watched, my method of research on this was a lot of YouTube videos, because that, fits into my life right now. And I was watching a number of YouTube videos, and there were some that were even referencing these movies. I think you watched this as well. This one movie that was made in, 1946. That was talking about global business powers. Eight global business powers that really run everything.
And GE was one of them.
GE is still one of them, right? So I think, when we run into things like this, I have a hard time going the full government conspiracy theory route, but I am willing to go there are powers in our world that run our lives that we may not be totally aware of. I'm totally willing to go there. So that's kind of where my hesitation comes in. I'm not fully tin hat on this guy, but I'm also like, I've got tinfoil in my drawer that I'm ready to pull out if need be.
Well, you got to keep some of that stuff around.
Yeah, you gotta.
It's handy for cooking too.
Common knowledge.
Right, but so that's where that kind of comes in for me, is that like I'm not willing to say that any or all of this stuff is conspiracy stuff. I'm not even willing to say the octopus is real, but I don't know.
There might be something like it.
There might be something similar to it, and it may not be as nefarious or consciously nefarious as we want to assume, but definitely there are things that run our lives that we don't know about.
Well, probably. I think the most likely Danny was probably being fed most of the stuff by Danger Man, aka Riconosciuto.
Yeah, he is amazing with the things that he said.
It really is,
yeah.
and I think that I don't think he was murdered, because if he and his research were such a threat to the octopus, then they obviously would have found his notes and gotten rid of them. They didn't do that. They didn't bother. I mean, here they go. This guy is such a danger to them that they engineer this perfect murder that looks so much like a suicide, and they don't bother to go find all of his notes and information and destroy that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, so yeah. I think it was a suicide.
Yeah,
it's sad. I'm not pro suicide.
No, I'm not either. And I sadly, I is doing all of the research that I did. I kind of feel like maybe he went down a track that he shouldn't have gone down, and that was not a good move for him personally. I guess not from any outside influence.
The other thing that we're not necessarily discussing is that the possibility that he killed himself because someone from an organization said, "Hey, we know what you're doing. Stop doing that." Or, threatened or whatever. And again, like, it's not, I wouldn't say that that's a reasonable assumption to make.
You know what? No, and I had the very same thought process. I had that he committed suicide under duress. Somebody prompted him to do it.
Yeah, we're going to murder your family.
But I got to be honest with you. If somebody said, Steve, you have to commit suicide, or we're going to kill everyone you know, I would probably do it. But you know what else I would do? I would get blitzed in the process. I would be so loaded.
Yeah.
Before I don't know. So that I wouldn't, to try and make sure I don't feel anything. And he was not in that position at all in terms of things that he'd ingested.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't assuming the, like, Steve, you have to kill yourself. Or it'd be like, hey, Steve, we know what you're doing, and if you keep doing it, we're going to kill all your family. So, like, printer attraction for everything you've ever done. That you would be in that kind of moral quandary of, well, do I don't know.
No, I know where you're going, so.
But, the thing about it is that if you're in that sort of situation, if I was anyway, I would be writing a letter or two to my family at least and saying, hey, don't believe my suicide note.
But didn't he say that? Didn't he say at one point,
he didn't say that if something happens to me, don't buy it.
Don't believe that it was a suicide.
He did say that to his brother.
He did say that.
So,
but
I'm just saying.
But I mean, he might have actually.
He might have been just joking around.
Well, yeah, I mean, he might have been actually.
Guys, there's a million ways this could go, and we could keep hashing out a bazillion little what ifs.
Yeah.
But I think instead what we need to do is we need to
wrap it up.
We could wrap it up. No, it's gone on for too long, I think. I think that Danny committed suicide. Yeah. Final verdict.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, you are more than welcome to tell us what your theory is, both in relation to the death of Danny Casolaro, and whether Danger Man's telling the truth, and what the heck, even if the octopus really exists. You can do that.
If you are the octopus, give us a call.
If you are the octopus, please stay away from our email address. That email address is thinkingsidewayspodcast@gmail.com. I tell you that because, well, I'm afraid that you're going to hurt us, but they already know our email address, so we're kind of...
They know everything about us.
Damn!
Well, they're outside the door right now.
Crap! We have this episode and all episodes on our website, along with links to some of our research, which that website is thinkingsidewayspodcast.com. thinkinsideways.com. We're on social media, so we're on Twitter at Thinking Sideways, or Thinking Sideways without the G. And we're also on Facebook, so you can find us, you can like us, and join the group. Again, don't be sending us friends requests. We want you to go to the group because that's where all the good stuff happens, as well as the regular page. We're on iTunes. I was trying to figure out where else to listen.
We're on iTunes.
We're on iTunes,
Hope
so you can listen to us on iTunes. You can download us on iTunes. If you do, please take the time to leave a comment and a rating. I checked us out the other day, and we just keep moving up into the main banks of the ratings, so it is awesome to see us get that high up there.
How are we doing these days?
Well, we're doing good.
Okay, good.
By the time this episode comes out, what I've seen today will be completely different. So,
yeah, good point.
We're way up there in there. We are also going to be on just about every streaming service at this point. So, whatever service you prefer to use, you're welcome to look for us. You're probably going to find the feed in there. We have the subreddit, which, Devin, again, what is the subreddit?
It's just Thinking Sideways.
Okay, thank you. I never can. I don't know. I still
know
don't
why you
understand
can't.
Reddit.
Yeah.
2 years later, I still don't get it.
Anything going on in the subreddit these days?
Just discussions and stuff.
Yeah, so there's discussions of episodes and other things, but that is in Reddit. If you're a Reddit user or you would like to be a Reddit user, that's a good place to go. We are also on Patreon, so if you like what we do with the podcast and you enjoy it and you would like to contribute, you are welcome to do that. Patreon allows you to contribute on a by-episode basis. However much is comfortable for you, it is completely voluntary, and you do not have to do it if you are not in a position to do it. I know a lot of folks, as we've been talking about this, have been hitting the PayPal button.
Yeah.
You can donate whatever you want
great.
as a one-time.
There's that too. But,
all of it is awesome. We appreciate it all. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we do appreciate our people. There are people who've pledged, per episode. We love you guys.
And it's
really,
fantastic.
thanks. It helps to defray the expenses a little bit.
It really does.
Yeah.
Well, that is all that we've got for housekeeping, and that is all that we have on Danny Casolaro and the Octopus.
There's more out there. There's much to be said, but I don't think there's any point.
Well, there is point, but there's a lot to be said. But I think that we're going to try and keep this as concise as we can, and we're going to go ahead and wrap this up.
Yeah.
So, thank you everybody for going through what turned out to be much longer of an episode than I expected, and we will talk to you next week.
Ta-ta.
Hail Hydra. Hail Hydra.
Did you say Hail Hydra or Heil Hydra?
I said Hail Hydra.
Okay. Thinking Sideways.
I don't understand.
Does not compute.
You never know.
Insufficient data to formulate a reply. What?
Stories of things we simply don't know the answer to.
Hi there. Welcome again to an episode of Thinking Sideways. I'm your host, Joe, joined as always by
Devin.
And Steve.
Yeah. Well, so we're going to tackle another cool mystery. This week we're going to talk about the disappearance of David Snedden.
Like the singer?
No, actually, well, it's funny. It's an interesting mystery in a mystery here is that David Snedden, the singer, has got a Wikipedia page, but this David Snedden does not have one.
I gotta be honest with you, the singer David Snedden kind of became the bane of my existence while researching this.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, I know, because
I don't care where he's touring. That's not what I'm after.
I know, it's unfortunate, but yeah, he does clog up your Google searches. Yeah, I know.
I'm sure that fans of him are saying the exact same thing about our story tonight.
Oh, I know.
I don't want to read about this story again.
Well, the guy shouldn't have been in China anyway, man. Anyway, back to the disappearance of David Snedden. He was a 24-year-old student and traveler who disappeared in China in 2004. And before I say anything more, I'd like to thank our listener Sean, who suggested this story. And I'm glad that he did, because I had not heard about this one before.
But it's really good.
It's an interesting story, don't you think?
Yeah.
And so on to the case then. Let me lay out the facts for you. David was 24 at the time that he just disappeared, and in 2004 he had finished his junior year at Brigham Young University and was planning on returning in the fall to finish out his final year. And he was making plans to go to law school. Had his life all planned out.
Yep.
Yeah, he was a Mormon, son of Roy and Kathleen Snedden, and he had 10 brothers and sisters.
Gosh.
Big old family.
Yeah.
And as you all probably know, Mormons are expected to go somewhere for 2 years on a mission and be missionaries and score some new Mormons. And
that is part of what they do when they're on their mission.
Yeah, it's not just trying to convert people.
No.
It's not even primarily trying.
Yeah, no. But David,
humanitarian kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, they do that kind of stuff too. Yeah, it's missionary work and whatever that might entail.
Yeah.
David spent his 2 years in South Korea. Then he was fluent in Korean. Yeah, and at BYU he also studied Mandarin. He lived in the Chinese house. Apparently they had different houses there so you could be immersed in the language. And learn it. So he lived in the Chinese house. And his plan apparently was to, when he came back in the fall of 2004, he wanted to study Spanish also, so he was planning on living in the Spanish house for a while. This guy was into languages.
Yeah, I guess.
Apparently he had some facility with them.
I was going to say, because that's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Neither of those are particularly easy languages.
Yeah, apparently, from what I understand, he was fluent in both Mandarin and Korean.
Yeah, those are pretty...
Yeah, so that's impressive.
Yeah.
And anyway, after he finished his classes at BYU in 2004, he went to China to study Mandarin in Beijing. And when the classes ended, which was at the beginning of August, he left Beijing with his roommate, George Bailey, who was also going to BYU, and they traveled together until August 9th. And at that point, George had to leave because his return plane ticket was earlier than David's. David continued on to Yunnan province, and I'm going to state this right away. There's a lot of words here that I'm probably going to mispronounce. So
Yunnan.
Yeah, is it what?
I believe it's Yunnan.
Yunnan? Okay,
Yeah.
Yunnan province, which is in the southwest of China. It borders Vietnam, Laos, Burma, way down there. He went to the town of Lijiang, where he spent the night, and on August 11th, he sent an email to his mother, which read, quote, actually, Devin, you want to read that so they don't have to listen entirely to my voice?
Sure, yeah. He says, I'm in Lijiang now, in western Yunnan province. I will take a bus and hike Tiger Leaping Gorge in about half an hour. I am having a great time here, but nonetheless am excited to come home.
Unquote. And that was the last that the family heard from him. He went to the tiny town of Kiaotu, which is the jumping off point for Tiger Leaping Gorge. And by the way, let me a moment here. Tiger Leaping Gorge, you can do a Google on it. It's just fantastically incredible.
It's amazing.
It's you've seen pictures of it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, if I ever get to China, I'm really going to try to go make that hike. I mean, it's really...
I don't know that I would take the hike though.
The hike is a little scary. In spots,
I'm a weenie. I don't know that I would take that.
Yeah. Well, more about the hike in a little bit here. He was carrying a large backpack. He left that at a youth hostel called Jane's Guest House, and he took the top. It's one of those backpacks that's got the detachable top part that you can use kind of like a fanny pack. And so he took that only and put a few clothing articles and a toothbrush and his Book of Mormon in there, and left to hike the trail. And I'm assuming he had some water in there too.
You would imagine.
Yeah. He never came back to get the backpack. The police found it there weeks later. He would generally stay in touch with his family while traveling. He would email them 2 or 3 times a week at least. When a week went by, they started worrying about not hearing from him, but they assumed, well, he's kind of traveling in a remote area, so maybe there's no internet cafes. But on the 26th of August, he was supposed to meet up with his brother Michael in Seoul, South Korea, and he didn't show up for their meeting. That would have been about 2 weeks after he left to hike Tiger Leaping Gorge. Yeah. So the family got in touch with the U.S. Embassy in China, and the Chinese authorities did a little searching. They went around, since he said he was going to go to Tiger Leaping Gorge, they went to the tiny town of Kiantu and put up posters all over the place, especially outside hostels. And they also went up the trail, because there were also small little hostels and what are called guest houses on the trail itself. So they went to all those places and put posters up and stuff and asked questions. And that's how they found the backpack. Other than that, they apparently his passport hadn't been used. His bank account hadn't been touched since August 5th. They checked the hospitals, jails, mental hospitals, found nothing. They decided that murder was out of the question because there's very little murder in that part of China. It's kind of rural and nice, nice. It's not like the cities. And China does, at least officially, have a very low murder rate. It's like 1 per 100,000, which is And I'm assuming most of that is in the cities.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of a cultural taboo.
Yeah, exactly. So they found his backpack where he left it at Jane's guest house, like I said, and looking at that, they found some clothes, some airline tickets, and some undeveloped rolls of film, which they turned over to the U.S. Embassy. Eventually, they concluded that David had fallen from the trail to his death, because after all, it is kind of a scary little trail.
Yeah.
Kind of treacherous. In fact, I came across several amusing blog posts by people who would hike the trail.
Yep.
You read those too?
I read several of them, yeah.
Yeah, and they were talking about how it was the most terrifying experience of their
There
lives.
was a lot of colorful description of the trail. Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds
That's
like
why I'll never hike it.
I don't know. It looks kind of awesome.
Yeah, no, it looks pretty awesome to me too, and I'm thinking about the opportunity for photography. I mean, you could take some really awesome pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah, but according and probably you guys read some of the accounts that I read, which is there were a few people that said it's very easy to lose your way and get sidetracked and get on the wrong path.
A lot of false trails
Yeah,
from
false
the
trails.
main trail.
Yeah, and then some of those will lead to very perilous places. And here you thinking, well, this is a real trail. You keep heading on down to this place that's going to lead you to maybe not certain death, but.
Oh yeah, no, I've read. I think it might have been one of the ones you put up of hikers who went down a false trail and followed it for 2 hours, and when they realized they were on a false trail, had to go back and then continue hiking in the real trail. So they're doing it in the dark. If you've ever hiked in the dark in just a flat area, it's kind of perilous. Now put yourself on some extreme slope with basically a goat track. That's what you're doing.
Yeah, I know. The only time I wound up lost and hiking in the dark, I luckily had a small flashlight with me.
Oh, that was a good thing for you.
Yeah, I'm really glad I had that with me, because I would have been hosed. As I said, the Chinese concluded that he left the trail, maybe rolled down the mountainside, maybe even on into the Jinsha River, which is at the bottom of Tiger Leaping Gorge, where he drowned if he wasn't already dead.
From the fall.
Yeah, from the fall. Is this the correct conclusion? Well, I found one Reddit thread. There's more than one Reddit thread about this. So this particular one was the shortest one I've ever seen. Somebody introduces the mystery, and everybody thought, "Oh, come on! Of course he fell and died." Yeah. But there were other threads that had a little more. Were a little less close-minded than that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. There are people, though, who think otherwise, including David Snedden's family, and especially the family, because they've done a lot of looking for David.
They really have invested heavily in figuring out what was going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good for them. I mean, they won't give up on their son.
I can only hope that my family would do the same.
You would hope.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've met your family. They don't seem to really care for you all the time.
True. They'd actually be kind of thrilled if something like this happened.
They're like, wait,